Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. For those of you who are Democrats, welcome back to this part of town. It's not been easy to come over to this part of town for a while, and hopefully this will not be such an infrequent event starting very soon. I'm Simon Rosenberg from NDN. Thank you all for being here. For those of you who don't know, NDN is a think tank based here in Washington, D.C. And we're excited to have, we sort of threw this together just a few days ago, frankly. We were talking to Joe and said, you know, why don't we pull some friends together and talk about all the remarkable things that are going on in American politics today, and that's why we're here. So what we're going to do is speak about 15, 20 minutes and then open it up for what I'm sure will be a spirited exchange. C-SPAN is recording this, so anything you say will be on YouTube for the rest of your lives. So behave. Also, if you could, turn off your cell phones, Blackberries, and although there are some of you who may want to be twittering through this whole thing, use discretion. And so what I'd like to do is introduce our guest of honor, my very dear friend, who I think has done more to teach me, frankly, about politics and about what's happening in American politics in the early part of the 21st century than anybody I know. I mean, I remember talking to Joe a few years ago about how, and what he described it was that the battlefield of politics was changing. He always has great metaphors and language to describe what's going on. And what's important today, also I should note, is that the second edition of his prescient book, called A Revolution Will Not Be Televised, is out. So if you're really moved by what you hear today and you want more, you can pick up his book and also spend time at the NDN website, ndn.org, which we are commenting on daily and producing lots of really compelling content that you can check out. So without further ado, I think one of the great visionaries of modern politics in America, the guy who I think was as responsible as anybody for ushering this new internet age of politics, my very dear friend, Joe Trippi. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. I'm sorry I ran a little late today. Thanks, Simon. It's always really good to get together, particularly at this moment, a week out. Very, sort of, I think, really inspired moment for progressives and people who want change in this country right now. Look, clearly, something started to change in our politics back in 2004, where more and more average citizens, day to day, out in the country, across the country, started to get more involved and more engaged with our politics and with our democracy. And the Obama campaign has done, and Senator Obama himself, has really tapped in. Obviously, his message has changed, but also the way they doggedly pursued this new politics in a way that captured millions and millions of Americans, 3.2 million of which have contributed to his campaign, raising $600 million. We all know the amazing things they pulled off. But one of the things that struck me was back when the naysayers were wondering, why were they investing in 120 paid staffers in Missouri months ago that they stuck with, no matter how much Missouri looked like it was a red state that wasn't going to move. And then there was the second call for how could opting out, was it a mistake to have opted out? How could they weren't raising enough, and they had this vast army that they were spending lavishly and doggedly to go after states that no way they could put into play. And I thought how ridiculous it was that anybody would ask, was it smart for them to opt out or not? Could they raise enough money to do it? I think I said in my book back then that this year's decided somebody would raise $500 million using the new media. I was off. They raised $600 million counting. But the amazing thing was how this campaign stuck to building progressive politics and building an organization in places that no one thought a Democrat could win. And whether he wins a state like Missouri or not, I think, will not mean that effort and that those 120 staffers in Missouri failed. They're building a party, an organization, and progressive movement for the future. But by putting those states in play, there clearly are all those states in play today. Florida, Ohio, Missouri, Michigan doesn't look like it is in play. But even Montana is looking kind of close right now. The RNC is actually putting money into Montana for McCain in an attempt to hold that state. So you see all these things that they've done and that they've built on. And that I think what I said again, the progressive movement, there are so many times when we looked at Kerry or what happened, we look in the rearview mirror and say, not again, please don't let that happen again. But even when some in the movement, some progressives were concerned about the way they were attacking these states and the money that they were spending, they were right. And what they had faith in was the people in those states. The progressives, the people that were organizing, the millions of people at the bottom who were organizing the country in those states for them. And I think they probably spent more, they had more volunteers, have more volunteers than we're about to see the greatest get out and vote effort in American history. Millions of volunteers with probably the greatest paid group of on-the-ground organizers working hand-in-hand with them. All of it working with a lot of the tools that started 4 years ago in the Howard Dean campaign or West Park campaign and other campaigns that occurred at that time, using the tools, the very primitive tools that we had. I've said before, and I'll end with this, that the 2004 effort was basically a bunch of folks that I'd call the Wright brothers. We were doing it with chewing gum and Scotch tape and proved that you could build a flimsy contraption that would glide down a sand dune in North Carolina and crash somewhere. But these guys, and we proved you could fly. That there wasn't a new kind of politics that would get somebody off the ground. These guys, by 2008, have skipped Boeing, skipped Mercury, skipped the Gemini project. I think they're Apollo 11 going to launch Barack Obama and land him safely in the White House. So it's great to be here today and at this moment with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. And let me add a few observations, and then we'll open it up for comments and questions. There are three points I want to make today. First, about the emergence of new politics. The second is that we're at, I think, a critical moment in our political history, which is we're seeing the end of the conservative ascendancy and the beginning of a new political era. And third is sort of just to remark for a minute on just sort of the remarkable Obama campaign and the rise of this remarkable man. First, on the new politics. What we've been saying for a few years is that what we're seeing, because of changes that are happening in the real world, not in politics, the new politics of the 21st century is emerging in America. It's being driven by three things. The emergence of the governing agenda that's today, the challenges we face today in the 21st century are very different from the 20th century challenges that we face. The second is the way that media and technology are fundamentally changing the way that we communicate and advocate. One statistic I use, and Joe talked about this, but in 1985, when I graduated from college, 90% of anybody watching television was watching live broadcast TV. Today, it's about a third. In the dominant media of politics and of our lives, you've seen this extraordinary change in the way that people consume the big media of our day. And obviously, that would cause disruption and changes in our politics. The third is that our people are changing. We're going through the most profound demographic transformation in American history since the arrival of the Europeans here in the 16th, 17th, 18th century. The country has gone in the mid-60s from a country that was 11% African American and 88.5% white to a country today that's 33% quote-unquote minority, whatever that's going to mean in this century, and 66% white. We're on track to be a majority minority country in 2042. So it means that just in the last 40 years, when the Republicans started to use what they call the Southern strategy, which put race at the front and center of American politics, which they used so successfully to win the White House and gain majority status, as a party that we're seeing 3 times as many people just walking around America, right, who are non-white. And that is a very different America than any of us have ever lived before. And I think it would be hard for any civil society to absorb that level of change. And I want to say, and we can talk more about it in Q&A, but I think America's handled this pretty well. And that we should be optimistic about the ability of this country to absorb the level of demographic and sociological changes going on that we're seeing with our changing population. But it's also important to recognize that, because there's no way to understand the emergence of a biracial candidate with a funny name, a skinny kid from Chicago, without understanding about how the demography of the country is changing. Second is that we're also at a particular moment, I think, in our political evolution and the fight between the two parties and the two major ideological movements. You know, from 1981 to 2006 is an era that we call the era of conservative ascendancy. It's when, you know, the Republicans and the conservatives were ascendant, the Democrats and the progressives were sort of in retreat after having been in charge for so long. And what happened, though, in recent years, in this period when America, for the first time since the 1920s, had conservatives running all parts of the government. It's been a long time they've been this far out of power. That Americans learned what it was like to live under conservative government. They found out that conservative government didn't work. And that they spit the bit on this rise of the conservatives. And what we've seen now is the collapse of a political party and an ideological movement in the United States in the last several years, really putting an exclamation point or an end point on what was a vibrant political era where, you know, for most of my adult lifetime, the story was this rise of conservatives. We're now seeing a different era emerging. What that's going to be, and whether it's an era of progressive dominance or a fight in a scrum between the two, you know, ideological movements, we'll find out. But certainly we've left, I think, a very distinct period in our history and are entering a third one. I mean, a new one. Finally, on Senator Obama. I think if we had had this session 2 years ago, and we got up and said that a week before the election, this guy named Barack Obama was going to be beating this war hero, John McCain, by 7 points in the national polls and being far ahead in the Electoral College, I think people would have laughed out loud. And it is really a testament, I think, to him and to his remarkable campaign, and Steve Hildebrand and David Axelrod and David Clough and Bill Burton and all the folks who've run this historic campaign. But let's also just reflect for a moment on what a remarkable man Barack Obama is and what he's been able to do against all odds, against defeating the Clinton machine, which is, you know, my home base in politics in Washington. You know, defeating this, you know, the Republicans came out of their convention ahead just a few weeks ago, and coming back and performing so strong. This guy is a remarkable man, and it should give us hope that what we're about to enter is a period of a remarkable presidency. And certainly I think the country is ready for that. And I just want to end by saying that, you know, about sort of what happened in the last few weeks. I get asked about this a lot. And you're starting to hear sort of remarkable excuses come out of the Republican Party about what happened. Right? One of them is my favorite, is the idea that, well, when the financial crisis came, it's inevitable that the party in power took a hit. Right? And that really it wasn't our fault. It was deus ex machina. This thing came out of the sky and sort of made it impossible for us to win. But let's really review about how this race ended in the last few weeks, because I think this is going to be important for setting the predicate of the interpretation afterwards, which is Sarah Palin and John McCain came out of their convention ahead in the election. It's hard to believe now, if you know where the polls are, but they were leading in all the national polls. And I, for one, thought it was possible that Barack was going to lose the election in the beginning part of September, given the kind of the rocket ship that Palin provided the Republican ticket. But what changed, I think, was the performance of the McCain campaign. And that the American public, I think, was ready to vote for John McCain. But he has been a disappointing candidate. He made a disappointing pick for vice president. And and his campaign has disappointed a lot of people who thought that he could do better. And when it all started to change for them was that in that week when the financial crisis came, right, Barack Obama looked steady and strong. He looked like a leader who was on top of his game. And McCain pulled this ridiculous political stunt about suspending his campaign, which didn't pass any, you know, BS detector that anybody had as being a legitimate thing. And I think it changed the campaign. It gave the American people a lot of information about McCain, which is that, like those other Republicans, he was more interested in putting politics over good government. And it started to, I think, really erode his brand. And then they saw him more in the debates. They saw the two candidates more in the debates. And again, Barack was reassuring and smart and on top of his game. And McCain seemed confused and addled and having a hard time fighting above his weight right through those debates. And then the third thing that happened was Sarah Palin, right, and I think we all have to recognize Tina Fey's contribution to this election, because I think Tina Fey gave everybody permission to say what they all believed. And up to that point, all the stories about Palin were all fawning, and sort of this remarkable rise of this amazing woman from this little town in Alaska. It was sort of a rags to riches story. It turned out it was really more an all about Eve story than a rags to riches story. But thanks for those who understood what that reference was. If you haven't seen it, All About Eve is the greatest political movie ever made with Bette Davis. And the bloom came off the rose, or whatever you want to say about what happened with Palin. But obviously, even Republicans have been very disappointed about her performance. And then finally, I think that the McCain campaign has seemed obsessed with things that are secondary and tertiary to the challenge we're facing. And so, in this great test that is this long and grueling campaign, Barack passed with flying colors, and John McCain didn't. And that's why they're losing right now. There was no structural imbalance. There was no sort of external thing that caused it. They had a bad candidate with an inadequate message. And what the American people know coming into this election is that the conservatives let this country down. Right? They left us weaker than they found it. Our people became less prosperous, less safe, and less free. And it's why they're, I think, ending this election by giving Democrats an extraordinary opportunity to lead. This is not a permanent thing. Democrats aren't going to be in power just because for the next 20 to 30 years. But certainly I think that if the election ends the way that it looks like it's going to end today, right, with Barack Obama winning by 5, 6, or 7 points, here's what we know. We know that he will win this election with the highest vote margin of any Democrat since Lyndon Johnson. We know that the Democrats will have more ideological control in Washington than they've had since the mid-1960s. We know that their opposition, the conservatives and the Republicans, will be more in disarray and disorganized than they've been in a very long time, certainly since the arrival of Reagan. And we also know that the coalition that they've used to win is something that the Democrats could use for 30 or 40 years. Because if you look at the two fastest growing parts of the American electorate today, millennials, the young people, and Hispanics, Obama's winning 2-1 in each of these groups. This is a very young coalition. This is an emergent coalition. This is a very 21st century coalition. This is not an aging 20th century coalition. And just like the coalition that FDR built for the Democrats in the mid-1930s, this is a coalition that could sustain the Democrats for a very long time. So this is a very different election than 1992, when I was in the Clinton War Room and I was a happy young kid who rode to Washington with all the other Clintonites who saw us defeated 2 years later, in those terrible midterms. Because one of the things I think that's so different is that, we won an electoral college landslide, but we only got 43% of the vote. 57% of the country voted against Bill Clinton in 1992. I will tell you, from having been there, we didn't know that. We acted as if we got 55% of the vote, which is no great surprise now, looking back on what happened. But Barack Obama getting 52, 53, 54, whatever the number is going to be, and I think it's likely to be in that range, and given the intensity of his support and the number of the millions of people who've not just voted, but who volunteered and given money, that I think that, and also given that the last time we had this kind of big victory for the Democrats was in 1964, when Lyndon Johnson won, when he won for reasons that were more than just about him. Right? That was a very complicated election a year after the Kennedy assassination. I think you can make the argument Barack Obama is coming to town, if he wins, more authentic support for him and his agenda than any Democratic president since Roosevelt and Truman. And this makes this next moment for those in the center left, I think, a one of great hope and opportunity, excitement, but also a sobering moment as well, because we recognize the severity and the significance of the problems they face, which are among the greatest set of challenges that any president would have inherited. Perhaps even going all the way back as far as FDR. So let's just hope that your appearance here today, just a block from the White House, is a common thing now in this new Obama era. That we're back in the part of town that the Democrats ran for a very long time. And that we're entering what will be a new and exciting era of progress for the country and for the Democrats. Certainly I feel that way today. And we're anxious to hear from you and your thoughts and get your take on everything. Thanks, everybody, very much.
Joe, that's why I had three quick things that author read that I think is very insightful. But here's a couple of facts and information. The first one is that people who watched Obama on YouTube, YouTube videos produced by the campaign, have equal. There are 14.5 million hours of people who watch that stuff. Now, over Tech President, they did an official count of the time. These are official. This isn't Will I Am or other videos that we've all looked at. These are official campaign stuff that was produced. 14.5 million hours. To buy 14.5 million hours of time would cost you $46 to $47 million. Well, McCain has amassed a whopping $1.5 million worth of people watching all the stuff that they produced during the entire campaign. So the Obama campaign and the people who are the evangelist supporters who are sending that stuff out there to watch has equal for free on YouTube about half of what McCain spend as an official campaign in the general election, about the $85 million he gets from the federal government. So that's, these are just essential things to sort of think about as they move forward. Now, the other side of that is, I agree with Simon about the unique moment, but also I think we are way underestimating the power of the next president. John F. Kennedy came to power at a time when there were enough TV sets finally at everybody's house that they, for the first time, the American people could watch all of them together to watch the president, at the same time on television. When Barack Obama steps, the next president, regardless if it's Barack Obama, when he stands there, it's going to be the first network president, the first wired president, whatever you want to call it. It's the end of the television presidency, the official one that we've been seeing for 40, 50 years. This is a totally different kind of presidency. Imagine when Barack Obama says, my first 100 days, I have my plan to pass health care. Imagine 3 or 4 weeks into that when he says, these are the 15 House members standing in the way of passing health care reform. No matter how much money they got from the HMOs or anybody, imagine 10 million people working those 15 guys over. It's not going to be pretty. This is going to be, it's exactly what's going to happen. This is going to be a president connected with millions of people in a way that the president's never had that connection before. Just the way Kennedy could connect with people in a way no other president ever connected with people before. And that is going to change the power structure in town to squeeze Congress in a way it hasn't been squeezed before. This could very well be the most powerful presidency we've seen. Again, for all the reasons Simon's echoed about Roosevelt and Truman, those all hold. But the other thing is it's Roosevelt, Truman at the changing of the communications era like Kennedy was, and an amazing amount of power connected all those people. The one cautionary thing, I'm going to caveat with, I believe the answer to this is the first part of what I'm about to tell you. But what's going on here is the undecideds are going to decide whether this is a blowout or whether Obama, in my view, Obama wins, but wins close. And traditionally undecideds move against the incumbent and the incumbent party. We see that in congressional races, Senate races. They move to challengers at the end, generally. And so that should move most of these undecideds. The break should be to Obama. And if it does, this is going to be much bigger than even the people who think it's going to be big. The other side of this is that Obama has been out there so long as the front runner. And with the press saying, he's up by X points, he's going to win, and pundits like me saying, wow, it's going to be big, etc., that he could very well have become the incumbent to these undecideds. In other words, hey, he's going to win. If they haven't decided to vote for him yet, are they going to push away to the underdog challenger. And I don't believe that. But if they do, I think, so it's just cautionary note, because the election hasn't happened yet. If that does happen, I think Obama's going to win, but it's going to be closer than people think, and it's going to be even more important that he had this massive field organization on the ground in states. He squeezes out Ohio by a point instead of blowing it out. Either squeezes out Missouri by a point, maybe loses there, but having that pressure in Missouri has kept McCain, running around with limited resources without the YouTube $46 million advantage that Obama had. Plus, by the way, that again, I go back, that's the official stuff. That's not counting will.i.am and citizens creating stuff and sending it to their friends. I mean, it's got to be asked. If it's $46 million that we can quantify today, and at least I sort of know how to try to quantify it, along with the guys at TechPrez and Simon. I mean, we kind of look at this stuff. I still can't quantify beyond that. The man with the citizen part of that, how you can measure, but it's several million beyond that. So I think this is going to be a different kind of presidency powered by a new kind of way to connect with the American people. And the only thing left right now, from my point of view, is how do these undecideds break? And I think they'll break to Obama, but the one caveat I've got is that it may not.
And since just one final point on that, and we'll definitely open it up, is that we've been writing on our blog the last few days that we should expect, the race, if you look at all the averages in the polls right now, it's somewhere around 50, 43, 49, 43, somewhere in that range. Let's just pick 50, 43, right, as a number. I think Holster.com today had it around 51, 44 or something, but it's like 50, 43. I think one of the things I believe is going to happen is that I still think McCain's going to get back to 45, 46. I mean, it's sort of unimaginable to me that a major party candidate in a two-way race ends up below 45, 46 in this race, which means that he's got 2, 3, 4 points he's going to gain depending on where you are in this final week. I think no matter what. I think that the McCain numbers the wavering Republicans will come home from McCain in the end, in part because the way they're closing the campaign with all the screaming they're doing about baby killer, Muslim, socialist, communist, right? All the stuff that they're yelling, that's really base talk, right? And they're having to spend time in the final weeks of this election talking to their base because their base doesn't come home. And I think there's some arguments to be made, and I said this on our blog today, that the McCain campaign has already conceded the election. That in essence, what they're doing now at a strategic level is trying to get their base to come home, so it's not a 57-43 election, that they'll take 54, 46, or 53, 47, so that they don't get destroyed down the ticket. Because they don't lose McConnell, they don't lose some of these other more conservative parts of the country, the states and the districts, because so much of how they're ending is not swing language, it's base language. And it's been surprising, I think, to a lot of people who have been tracking this about sort of the way, and you could argue that it's because it's been an inept campaign with a terrible candidate. It also could be that they actually have made a sort of a Hobbesian choice, that they have the power to get to 46, they don't have the power to get to 50. And so I think that one of the things you're going to see is for those that everyone doing the white knuckle stuff in the last week, is that McCain's going to get back up to 45, 46. The question, as Joe said, is what happens with everybody else. And I think the number to watch is not so much McCain's number, but Obama's number. If Obama's number doesn't drop and it stays at 49, 50, 51, it's over. Right? And the election's over. I mean, and so my advice to everyone here who's a Democrat is that, anticipate McCain reclaiming the ground that he should have had, that he lost and gave up because of his disappointing campaign, coming back to 45, 46. And even if he gets to 46, right, Obama still wins by 7 or 8 points, and it's a landslide. Presidential race, 5 points is a landslide. So, this is, because I think what's going to happen is the media is going to want to declare any uptick in McCain's numbers as being the race tightening. And there's a difference between McCain gaining ground and the race becoming competitive. And that's the key thing, I think, to watch in this final week. And the key number then is Obama's number. Barack, if you look at the aggregate of all the tracks, and I'm like you, as I'm spending way too much time on 538 and Bolster.com and Daily Kos and everywhere else that's looking at all this stuff, right, is that if you look at, I use the Dem from Connecticut morning roundup on Daily Kos, it's sort of my guide every day, is that, in the last few days, McCain has sort of ticked up 1 or 2 points in virtually every national track, and Obama's not gone down in any. There's been no movement on the Obama number. And certainly in the states, there's been, if anything, there's been improvement for Obama in the states as opposed to erosion. And in part, because what Dan from Connecticut sort of speculates today is that the base that's coming home for McCain is largely in the South. And that what you're seeing is that in states that he's winning by 10 points or win by 12 points, but that it's not affecting the battlegrounds, at least yet, right? And we'll see. But as Joe mentioned, we got a long way to go in this thing, but certainly things look pretty good for Senator Obama. Let's open it up. Courtney has a mic, so raise your hand. We'll call on you. Please use the mic so you can get on TV and identify yourself and ask questions.
Thanks. Ken Wash, Software and Information Industry Association. Great analysis from both of you. And I do believe that there is a fundamental political alignment that we've been waiting for a long time. It's been written about in the 90s. But posit for a moment, especially you, Joe, posit for a moment that if 60,000 votes in Ohio had flipped in 2004 and John Kerry today were running for re-election in this economic crisis, would this realignment be happening now, or would it be delayed for 2 or 4 more years?
Well, obviously, I think if anything, the incumbent party, the president, the incumbent, a Democrat, and if the same cycle were going on right, the financial crisis was going on right now, which, by the way, I think it would be going on right now. It's probably a miracle that they held it up as long as they did. I think they're, trying to push it off until after the election if they could, but weren't able to hold it up. So assuming all those facts, no, I think the incumbent party, Democrat or Republican, would be in deep trouble. I think the current president, Bush, is in trouble for a hell of a lot more than that. He was way in trouble before the financial crisis did. So it's hard to factor there wouldn't be an Iraq problem. I mean, different things that could be out there. The one thing I'm not trying to get away from your answer. So I think Democrats would be in trouble and it would be delayed. I think. Frankly, I don't think either party was doing all that well on defining itself, and that both parties could have been in this mess pretty easily. It's really a testament to Obama that ran outside the establishment, enough support from the establishment, but outside of it enough with a real change message that he's able, I think, to build that kind of realignment we're talking about into the future. We could have nominated, we could have won this election and not have somebody who could lead people into a realignment. So it's him. I mean, it's like the candidate has a lot to do with this. But the one thing I'm going to say is I get asked a lot, but when I talk about that close thing, I'm just trying to again, tell people, look, you got to go out there and work your rear end off. Don't take this thing for granted. Because of those 60,000 votes in places like Ohio, from my point of view, I want to end up 60,000 the other way this time around. I think there's a good chance we will. But the one thing I think I get asked a lot about the Bradley effect, about how people may pull back from Obama at the very end. Look, I was Tom Bradley's deputy campaign manager in 1980. I was there. It's 26 years of Forrest Gump. Life's a box of chocolates. Anyway, it's 26 years later. I can guarantee you 2 things. One, it's not 10 points like it was if the Bradley effect was the Bradley effect. That's 10 points in 26 years ago. It's probably not 0 either in terms of people who may have a problem with Barack Obama, his ethnicity, race, etc. But I think it's a lot closer to 0 than it is to 10, and maybe 1 or 2 points. Get that. And the bigger thing is, look, I think the day after this election, we're going to be talking in a way, reason is even a close poll going in with its tightening is going to get blown out. is because I think the day after this election, people are going to be talking for a long time about the Obama effect, about millions of young people showing up, millions of people who have been outside the political system, participating by voting. You're seeing it every day in early voting. So I think in the end, when this thing, there's a bigger chance that this explodes for a lot of reasons Simon talked about, away from McCain, I mean, flawed candidacy with a party that's out of ideas. And you know, dangerous, they're not going to go retool and rethink and come back, you know, harder and tougher and watch for them 2 years or 4 years from now. But right now, I think this thing is going to explode the other way, and it's the Obama effect. It is this leader, this man, and the way he's handled himself throughout. In the end, people move away from the guy they have doubts. The people have doubts about not Barack Obama. They're having doubts about McCain. Erratic campaign last month, picking Palin, questionable, talking about pulling out, you know, I'm going to suspend my campaign, not suspend the campaign. The guy everybody's sort of sitting around going, huh? It's not Barack. Barack's been cool, calm, level, you know, so I think there's a real shot that we'll be talking about something pretty big. When you see lines on election day, when you see massive turnout on election day, that's when you start to know what's really going on out there, and I think we're going to see that.
Just one other quick point is that
I will do this. I'll shut up.
No. Look, I think the great caution for the Democrats, and it's similar to what you were saying, is that, you know, the electorate, people are very unhappy right now. You know, the wrong track numbers are higher than any time in recorded polling history, and have been net negative longer than any time in recorded polling history. If you look at the exit polls in 2006, I think there was, it's conclusive that what drove the Republicans from power was the economy and not the war. That it was the upset that people had about the struggle in their own lives, in the sense that there was nobody in Washington really looking out for them. I mean, if you look at the economic data, it's very simple, right? In the Clinton era, the median income for a typical family went up by $8,000. In the Bush era, despite high GDP growth, high productivity growth, incomes have gone down $1,000. People are making less money today than they were 8 years ago. And I think that the great volatility in the elections, in the electorate today, is related to economics. And the sense that people are not getting ahead, that globalization isn't working for them, that the current economic strategies are not producing broad-based prosperity. And if the Democrats don't solve that, if the Democrats in the next 2 years, 4 years, if incomes don't go up, if wages don't increase, if people don't feel material improvement in their own lives, then the Democrats won't be removing the volatility, I think, from the electorate that exists today. And I think the Democrats have had a little bit of a hard time sort of figuring out why it is this opening has come. And the guy who figured it out in the last 10 weeks was Barack Obama, right? I mean, there has been a huge shift in the language of his campaign from sort of talking about a whole bunch of things to talking about one central thing, which is the struggle of everyday people. This has become the central organizing principle of his campaign, which is, I think, one of the reasons why, you know, he's closed so strongly in this election, is that he's tapped into, you know, what is the central dynamic in American politics today, which is a lot of people are really unhappy with their opportunity, their prospects, what's going to happen with their kids, their communities, and everything else. And so I think that, you know, it's been our advice to the incoming administration, whoever it is, and we obviously will be Obama, is that the central domestic challenge is going to be to get wages and income up. And that the administration has to be organized around that. Because I think if there isn't significant progress, then the volatility that's there will remain. If they do make progress in this, then we could be looking at, you know, a long era of progressive governance. Yes, David.
I'm David Benjamin. I publish the Washington Independent, an online newspaper, among other sites. It's nice to see you here, Joe. My question is based on the speculation, which is, let's speculate that Barack Obama wins the election. Maybe we can call him the first internet president. And the question is, given this extraordinary list he's created of 3.5 million people or more and $600 million, Joe, if you were advising him on his internet strategy, you know, day one, as it were, in the Oval Office, how would you transition that list into the Oval Office? how would he use it? Can he use it? Is that allowed? And what would it look like? Would he be doing regular speeches on YouTube every week from the Oval Office? Would he be segmenting his list by congressional district to have them get in touch with these elected officials? Could it be used in the re-election? All that stuff. Because clearly it's a huge asset. And the question really is what happens to it after the election.
Well, I mean, I think the first part is he obviously, I mean, the big community organizer and from the bottom up, and his staff, his campaign team, and his team in the White House, understand. First thing is to be probably the first president and team who understands this stuff. So let me put it this way: it won't take a whole lot. Forget about the legalities of this, how do you get the list over and all that stuff. I don't think it's going to take a lot for him to say, or one email after that list saying, hey, go over to whitehouse.gov and sign up to help me, or to help change America. I think it'll be like a 95% or maybe probably 200% of those people will come. And I think, a president appealing to the American people to become part of actually participating in their democracy in a way that is more active, and by coming to whitehouse.gov and setting that up in the right way. mywhitehouse.com. I don't think it's going to take a lot for this president to say, go to mywhitehouse.com and help me change America, or help me move us in the right direction. So once you go that step, I don't think you're talking about 3 million people or whatever. It's going to be amazingly big. And he also understands that even when people disagree with him, they understand that part of it is having that conversation, like what happened with the FISA vote and the group that broke out within his website that wasn't in agreement with him. They didn't ban those people or kick them out. They just had the conversation. He addressed it. They may still disagree with him, but they understand there's something different happening in this campaign. I'm not sure how they'll do it. I mean, like I said, it's not too hard to see mywhitehouse.com. I mean, think about it. I mean, hey America, it's your mywhitehouse.com. So they get it, and many of those people, like Joe Rossbars, came up in the Dean campaign. I mean, I'm really proud of a lot of what these people have done, having moved on from that experience. It's pretty amazing. They'll be involved somehow, and they get it, and he gets it. So that's why I said earlier, I think when you start thinking about those kinds of different things that this White House is going to probably do, that no White House has done before, I would not like to be a member of Congress who stands in the way of passing the president's energy bill. As long as he's brought millions of people along with him, that's going to be a problem for a member of Congress. By the way, I'm not saying that's fair to the member. I'm just saying it fundamentally is going to change how this all works in a way that I don't think Capitol Hill's necessarily ready for.
Yeah, how it works. What's the risk that Congress is going to initiate things that are too radical or too liberal or whatever from the bottom? How is he going to keep control of the policy if there's a blowout in both the House and the Senate?
I don't think. I think he's going to get a pretty broad berth to start this thing. When he does his agenda on, in the inaugural, and says, "This is what my agenda is." I mean, I think that I don't think there's going to be a lot of room outside of his agenda. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty aggressive, and I think members are going to learn pretty early that something's changed here. Now, when they go try to tap into this, so far no one's. That's the real problem for senators and members of Congress. No one has been able to tap into that nationally. I mean, which I think is the next thing that's going to happen. You're going to see a Feingold, something like that, a Wellstone. And I'm not talking about a firebrand on one side of political spectrum. But like Newt Gingrich in the House in this kind of environment probably would have been able to generate a large national community to kind of, so there, I think there'll be personalities that will do it, but I don't think right now one exists today.
Hi, I'm Alice Cohan from the Feminist Majority. And I think as we're talking about the participation from around the country after the election on Congress, I would like you to talk a little bit about, we still have another week, and how the potential of making it so that both the House and Senate are filibuster-proof, and the House being a strong majority to meet the goals and possibilities of an Obama-Biden administration.
You're not speechless.
No, I was just trying to give my esteemed colleague a chance. God, that's weird for me, even to talk like that. That is the key. You know, the key here in the next 7 days. I don't think, like I said, whether things break bigger or just sort of float back down because of the natural tightening. I think Obama is going to win this thing. I think part of them putting these 120 people, hundreds of people in states that we had no thought of winning, is part of really helping. It's actually helping to different challenges. I'm working Joe Garcia, who's somebody that was always, and Simon can talk to him, somebody about it, but somebody who really worked hard at Indiana and sort of some of the stuff that we were doing around Hispanics and the way to communicate to them, is running for Congress in Miami. They're running some of the most, I've not seen lies like this in politics before. I've seen, I've been about this about everything in 30 years. They are running ads against, the Republicans are running ads against this guy, where they literally flash like the Enron logo and corruption, and then say like, you can't vote for Joe Garcia, he's corrupt, and he has nothing to do with it. They're just like doing saying. One of the reasons I think I think he has a real shot. And this is like one of the things I'd say, go out and help in any of these, whether it's $25 or going out and, putting another 4 hours in, go to some of these targeted races where we have a shot and do something, because I think they're all really close to being much bigger than people think. I think we can get to 60 senators, for instance. We can't. I think Garcia's, one of the reasons we have a shot down there is not just everything that we've been doing to knock down the lies, but the fact that the Obama campaign didn't walk away from Florida, is contesting it, does have ads up about change, and is making it competitive at the presidential level. That's going to give. That means we don't have to swim upstream as much as we thought we were going to do earlier in the year. So he's got a real big shot at defeating Mario Diaz-Balart. You're seeing these. By the way, he's not on anybody's scope. It's not like he's like one of the top targets in the DCCC. Although they've been helping down there, I'm just saying that there are lots of races like that around the country that are right on the verge. Do not, sort of count any of them out. If you got $25, do something with it. And it's not going to, right now, I might get a shot for saying this, but it's not going to do Obama. Your $25 right this second. It's not going to do Obama, change the Obama thing. It could change a House race. So I've just probably made sure I'm not in the White House. Do not give Barack Obama. Give some worthy, challenging congressional candidate out there. Don't give to Obama. Brandon, I said that.
Hildebrandt's on the phone.
Yeah.
So, just to build on that 1 second, is that Obama is further ahead at this late stage than any Democrat since Lyndon Johnson, since 1964. And his margin, because remember, Clinton got 43 and 49. Kennedy got 50.1. And then, Carter got 50.1. So you have more pull at the top of the ticket, potentially, in this race than any Democrat seen in 44 years. So what Joe's saying, and we're a nonpartisan organization, or we used to be anyway. My lawyers don't see this. Is that
I take it all back.
but just keep in mind, and I'm just making an observation, that there is a lot of stuff is in play that wouldn't have normally been in play because of Obama's strength at the top of the ticket, and frankly, the investment they've made with changing the electorate. And I think this is really one of the great stories, that there are going to be more women, more African Americans, more Hispanics, and more young people voting this election than any election we've ever seen. Joe Garcia's race, for example, Joe has an amazing statistic, but the party registration in that district 2 years ago was 38 Republican, 31 Democrats. Today it's even. It's dead even. So that was an overwhelmingly Republican district that's now become even in party registration. The registration stuff that's going on, which the Obama campaign's been part of, but it's also just been human beings going and re-registering. And some of this has been done through mechanics, but some of this has just been for change out there. It's really extraordinary. And this is, if you look at all the rates that we saw in the primaries of how many people voted, how many people have given money, how many people have, volunteered, we're seeing astronomical, as Joe was saying, astronomical levels of citizen involvement in their country. And my own belief is that our hope has to be that that's not something that quickly dissipates, right? That this sort of renewal of our democracy that we're seeing through this internet age where it's much easier now to get in the game and participate is something that becomes a permanent condition of our politics, I hope, and not something that is sort of we've had a high watermark on. Because I think to build on what Joe was saying earlier, and I think this is very important, is that if you look at the modern center left today, there's so much vitality, right? I mean, the blogs, one of the reasons I became a very early supporter, along with Joe, of the blogosphere and the early NetRoots was, debate and discourse and argumentation is a prerequisite for health of an ideological movement, right? Fighting, not so good. Debate, really good, right? And having many more voices fighting it out in having vigorous, spirited debates, as we see now every day in the NetRoots, the blogosphere, easily accessible to anybody, here or around the world, right? Imagine, can you even imagine, just like you can't really imagine life before a cell phone, can you imagine center-left politics before the blogosphere, right? It's sort of like, was there a day when you couldn't go to Coast and sort of see all these crazy people arguing with each other, right? And I think this is incredibly exciting because, I'll just use my dad as an example. My dad's 76 years old, and the way that he interacted with politics for most of his life was he read the New Republic and the New York Times. And today, anything Marcos tells him to do is what he does, right? And anything Wes Boyd tells him to do is what he does. And my father is more well-informed and better connected to the discourse and debate of our politics than he's ever been because the systems we have for accessing all this has become so easy. And I think that's what's so exciting about what's going on now is that there's a profound change going on. I think this is something that's happening deep within people. And whether win or lose, what Obama is going to leave behind is millions and millions of people who've gotten this taste of citizen involvement and engagement in the life of their country and their democracy that I think will have transformative effects that we can't even imagine right now for a very long time. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say quickly, though, that what I meant to say clearly was that if you're inclined to give a contribution to Barack Obama, you should give it instead to a congressional challenger in either party of your choice. I want to make it clear that that's what
I'm Karen Eason with the National Women's Political Caucus, and here's my question, following up on what you said. Given that we would have a fundamental sea change in philosophy because of this election, and that it would be more center progressive, that's an awesome responsibility. So what, between the three of you, what are three strategic things that the new administration, assuming with the Obama, I mean, it requires some strategy to keep this going and productively going. So what What's some 3 good strategical goals that you think the new administration should have?
I got one. Now, lead. Lead. Somebody who can't lead would have a huge problem, because all of the liberal or progressive groups around the country and different people have a laundry list of stuff they want to get done forever, right? And now you have this massive majority which could get them all done. Let me explain. That's what happened to the Republicans, right? What happens when you gain those kind of numbers is you actually start doing all of it, and some of it doesn't add up. I don't mean that once you put it all together, it doesn't add up. I think a president and Obama's shown this. He knows where he wants to go. And so a president who leads, who says, I'm going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, come with me, lead in the direction he wants to go, is not going to have as big a problem sort of filtering through all that and going, taking the progressive change of the country and sustaining it. If he tries to do all of it at once, we're likely to have as big a backlash, in my view, as the Republicans. You got to you got to lead the country to where you go. You can't just start nearly jamming it down people's throats the way the Bush administration did it. We progressives may have really big, bold ideas about where we need to go in this country. We may have really philosophical things that we want to get accomplished. But we're going to have a much better chance of accomplishing them if we take a longer view of leading the country in the right direction and bring people along with us than to just sort of jam it down people's throats because we have the votes to do it. That's not going to work. I actually have faith in the Obama. You see it in the way they carried their campaign. And there are a lot of people who are not going to be happy in the first few years. A lot of progressives are going to go, wait a minute, what's this? This isn't progressive enough for us. But I think that he's got a real idea of where he wants to go, and I think that's going to be. I think people will give him that benefit of the doubt to follow where he wants to go, and then they may start pushing him a little in the second half of that term if they don't feel they've gotten enough.
Three quick points. First, on a domestic level, and this will start to play out with stimulus in just a few weeks. It's our hope that the big decision we make, we're going to invest to accelerate the development of the 21st century economy. Meaning that I think what we have today is 20th century skills and 20th century workers, 20th century schools and 20th century infrastructure, and 20th century buildings and 20th century homes, and 20th century transportation systems, and all these things that are the legacy of massive investment over a long period of time, built around gasoline being $1.50 per gallon. And technology not being as rampant as it is today, and a global economy that's very different. Where we're going to need to have the kind of lives for my three little kids that I want them to have, we're going to need 21st century schools, and 21st century skills, and 21st century infrastructure, and 21st century homes, and 21st century buildings, and 21st century cities, and all these things. And I think that our great challenge, as Joe pointed out, over the next 10 to 20 years, is I really think we're at the beginning of sort of a 20 to 30 year era that it's going to take to sort of solve these big problems that are in front of us. This choice for Democrats and progressives to say we're going to invest in accelerating the development of this 21st century economy and to let go a little bit of the 20th century economy and move headlong into this new age. Second is that I do think the global governing structure that FDR and Truman built is sort of coming to the end of this month, and that we've seen, as Fareed Zakaria has called it, the rise of the rest. And this was our goal. This was an American goal. Our goal was to let the people of the world lift themselves up and build free societies and democracies and to have rising standards of living around the world. The great thing is, at least up until this financial crisis, this was all actually happening. But it means that these countries that are rising up, China and Brazil and Mexico and Indonesia and India, need a bigger seat at the global table than they have. And that's going to be something that we have to help lead. And then finally, we need to pass comprehensive immigration reform, that project and then the ends. I think there's almost no greater moral challenge facing the next president than fixing our broken immigration system. For those of you who don't know, today it's possible for ICE workers who work for the immigration system to knock on the door of a U.S. citizen with no warrant, arrest them, and put them in jail with no habeas corpus and no capacity to get them out of the detention center. This is morally unacceptable in this country at this stage in our lives. It is happening all the time. And in all these raids that take place, the same thing happens every day, which is there are 30 or 40 kids who are usually U.S. citizens who have nobody to pick them up at school because their parents are gone, right? There has to be a better way for us to deal with the immigration system. And I do think this is a huge moral test for our leadership, whether we can fix it. And certainly, I want to thank many of the people in this room who worked very closely with us on this, because I think Senator Obama gets it on this issue. He's really stood while his opponents ran away from the immigrants, he stood firm, he doubled down. And I think he's really committed to this, and I'm hopeful that we can get this done in 2009. Nelson, can we get that mic?
Nelson Cunningham. Joe, you mentioned the commanding financial advantage that Obama has. Can we just, if he does have a commanding win next Tuesday, can we expect people to say, well, he just bought his way to a big win? And if so, what do we say back?
Welcome to politics. I mean, it worked for George Bush and all these other things. Look, the guy with the most money wins. And unlike everybody, before like 2003, who chased most of that money down, having to take back money or money from interest and stuff. He did it. He didn't take back money. He didn't take lobbyist money. I think the average contribution now is under 100. I mean, $600 million is the average contribution. We did $59 million in the 8 campaign with an average contribution of $77. So, I mean, it's amazing that you can get to $600 million and keep it in that range. So, yeah, he had more money, a lot more of it came from the people than anybody else's money in history, and he won. And that's, I think that's more a testament of how many people wanted him to be their president. They actually reached in their pocket and did something. And the fact that he could get that many people reach in their pocket and do something. I mean, 8 years ago, you said to anybody, I mean, forget about the internet, that many people would actually get so active. We're not talking about going and knocking on a door or something. We're talking about they literally reached in their pocket and gave money to a candidate for president of the United States. That many people. We'd all be amazed. It started in 2003, 2004. But the one thing I'll say, by the way, and I've said this before, just like the Obama campaign made the Dean campaign look like a joke, I guarantee you that 8 years from now, after his 2 terms, that 8 years from now, there's going to be some candidate for president of the United States that swamps this campaign so much that we're laughing and we thought this was the most amazing thing. There will be it's the network, stupid. I mean, Carville used to run around saying it's the economy, stupid. In this age, it's the network, stupid. And this guy built a bigger network of Americans than anybody. And that network isn't shrinking. It's getting bigger every couple of years. There's more people on broadband, more people with access, more people using it, more people learning how to make a video, more people learning, buying a book on Amazon and the damn thing shows up the next day and their credit card still exists. Isn't their identity's not stolen? So they do stuff. And, they've raised this much in UI. I mean, like I said in The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, when I wrote that somebody would raise $500 million this cycle. We're still talking about ridiculous numbers, right? There's 300 million Americans. 300 million. 100 and something, way big adult population is part of that. We're all running up and down, doing somersaults down the street because 3.2 million of them gave Barack Obama money. You cannot tell me that when he gets his 60-something million votes out there on election day, that 10% of those people wouldn't have given him $100 to change this country forever. They would have. They just still not. We still haven't grown the network. It's happening. That never happened. And it's going to be. That's one of the reasons, by the way, I think the Republicans are in a lot deeper trouble than just this election, because there's something happening out there, and they haven't figured out how to make it work for them. And it's look at this the Kane campaign. I mean, can't rub two sticks together to start a fire, and online. And if they don't figure that out soon, there's going to be a network of millions and millions and millions of people that are connected with a progressive agenda and working to make this country and getting their friends to come and join, while the other side just shrinks and can't make the new system. If they continue to rely on pioneers and rangers as the way to fund themselves, they'll die. And I'll tell you one last thing, and I'll shut up. But when does the Democratic Party, when does Barack Obama, who doesn't take PAC money, doesn't take lobbyist money, a DNC now that doesn't take PAC money, doesn't take lobbyist money. They're the only committee that did that. And I've got to finish myself with the Democratic Progression and Democratic Senate Campaign Committee too. But when does the president, if this party ever says, as a party, we won't take PAC, we won't take lobbyists, we're going to, and by the way, we challenge the Republican Party to join. First of all, they're dependent on it. They can't live if they stop taking it. So we challenge the Republican Party to stop taking it with us. We're unilaterally doing it right now. One, we can. Why? We have millions of people who give $25. So we can. I'm not talking about altruism now, but you put that up there, and what you just set up is the Republican Party either changes to or exposes itself as beholden to money that the American people despise, which isn't a good place to start out as we enter the new era. So whether that happens or not, I don't know, but that's the driver. And like I said, that probably just got me like another 2 merits.
2 more quick ones, and then we'll let everybody go. Who's the mic? We're on this side, so let's go over here. Yes, ma'am. We've got something. And we'll end up on over here.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Sanders, and I want to pick up on what David said and kind of turn it over. I live my life among civilian waters. That's what I do, especially women. And they have a sense of ownership of this campaign that commercial people would kill for. But they feel like this belongs to them. And I'm interested in how you think a President Obama and an administration can maintain their faith and their commitment when they feel such a strong sense of ownership and they're not going to be able to fulfill all of their desires.
Well, like I said, it's leadership. It's saying, here's my first step, and I need you to come with me. And, some people will be angry if the first step isn't their thing. I'm not talking about whether it's women or something else. And, the maturity of a movement is understanding that everybody can't take the first bite. And if we've elected, we have ownership, but we've elected a leader who we trust. And that's the thing. It's basically credibility and trust and authenticity. That's what this guy has. And so you trust him that if he says these are the first 3 things we're going to do, that he's going to, great, I have ownership, and he's telling me what the first 3 things are, and I'm working with him to accomplish that. That's a hell of a lot different than the Bush administration that decides stuff and then rams it down and reads. I mean, there's a big difference in style and authenticity and trust. There's no credibility. The president, 25 times in the last 30 days, has told us the economy's going to get great. We've got a new plan. Next day, the economy's going to be great. We've got a new plan. Next day, and no one was listening to him on the first day, right? Because he didn't, he lied about this, he lied about that. The administration couldn't be trusted on the war, on anything. So, there's a different, if that's the presidency that comes out of this, it's not going to, it won't last the first 100 days without people being on. But if it's a very open, here's what I want to do, the inaugural that talks about the 3-4 things that we've got to accomplish in the first 100 days in the first year, and it's laid out there. There's going to be people that are upset. That's what I was saying. If we do that, if we force him to do everything the progressives want done, in the first couple of years, I guarantee you what will happen. We will be out of it. Because he has to lead the country to where, to where we think this thing needs to go. In terms, the immigration, all these different things that you want to accomplish. Take a leader who's explaining to the American people why he wants us to go there, and even against where the original numbers were. I mean, in other words, it doesn't necessarily mean that you start with all the 80%ers. All the things that 80% of the people want to do. But you got to have some of those with some of the, okay, this one is going to take some sacrifice, but I believe the American people. That's what I'm saying. Explaining to the American people that that you can't have a war, and where the only people who are sacrificing are the families and the people who are serving, and we're not, and there isn't some level of responsibility and sacrifice. Therefore, I want to do this for our veterans, or I want to do this, because that's the kind of country they're fighting for. It's leading the country in a direction that, it's not necessarily going to be a straight arrow right off the bat to where you or someone else wants to take it, but it's in a lot better direction than we were going in, and over time we trust him to get us a lot closer to that mountaintop than any other leader was going to take us. So, that's where I think, and I think if it weren't this man, I think it would be a big problem, because I don't know who else that we had who's so, I think the most amazing thing about Barack Obama is he knows who he is. That's why he's not flappable. He's not, I watched him really close. This is not a guy who's easily flappable. He doesn't, you can't knock him off his game. Why? Because a lot of these guys don't have a clue who they are. And they get up there, and it's real easy to take. McCain switched who he is so many times that you can actually watch it happen right in front of you during Q&A. This guy's not like that. And, I used to have a lot of respect for McCain, but, this campaign has just been amazing how much he's wavered all over the place. This guy doesn't do that. He is who he is. He knows where he wants to take us. I think he's got the kind of leadership to make it really clear where we're going. And sometimes we are going to have to help him explain to the rest of the country and get out there and knock on some doors to explain why his health care plan is the one we need. That's what I'm talking about. I don't mean banging on the members of Congress. I'm talking about when that health care plan is on the table, the army that's out there that's willing to go knock on their neighbors' doors and say, look, I really think you're not asking them to support candidate Barack Obama anymore. You're at their doors saying, this is a plan, the health care plan that the president is trying to pass. Will you work with me to help the president pass this health care plan? And I think there are going to be a lot of Americans who say, Republican doors they will be knocking on, will say, yeah, show me the plan. Where do I sign my name? How do I help? And that's something that we haven't had a leader with that ability, and with never before people on the ground who are willing to serve that president in their country the way I think Barack Obama is going to empower people to do it.
I think it's a great way to end. So thank you for everybody. That's 5 minutes.